last Tuesday of White History Month. My friend Bill Lockwood is here. One of the smartest white men on this side of heaven. A gift from God. Do we have an opener for Bill?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I don't say nothing. Opening for Bill Lockwood. And Bill Lockwood is a blogger, a radio host, and a radio host at American Liberty with Bill Lockwood. He's a preacher at Our Park Church of Christ, and he also teaches in Wichita Falls, Texas. And the author of a great guide for, I highly recommend you get Ezekiel, the watchman of Israel. Check it out, all right? We're going to tell you how to get to it. Bill, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Jesse Lee. How are you today?
All is well. How are you?
Very good. Your summer going well?
Amazing. Happy White History Month.
Oh, okay. That's great.
Did you know that July is White History Month?
I remember you had mentioned it before, but no, I had been celebrating it, but maybe I should. I've only got a couple days left.
Yeah, every July is White History Month, and we got to celebrate it. We cannot afford to forget white history. Otherwise, it'll be over for America.
All right. All right. I'm ready to do it.
So, Bill, I want to ask you, when you hear the words black leaders, what goes through your mind?
When I hear black leaders?
Yes, when you hear the words black leaders, what goes through your mind?
Well, I think about the national leaders that are very racist. I believe the Elijah Cummings of the world and the Barack Obama. I think about those individuals who are so tilted, racist, anti-white people. And that's how I think about it. They want to remake America in a socialistic image. They want to remake America along racial lines and force America to live certain ways and live in certain neighborhoods and do different things like that. So that's what I think about the black leadership.
Do you ever wonder, when you hear black leaders, does it ever occur to you what is wrong with black people that they need other human beings to lead them, the men and the women? White people don't have leaders. Mexicans don't have leaders. Do you ever wonder what's wrong with black people that they need leaders?
No, I haven't thought about it in those terms, really, honestly. But I do think that, we've got a horrible racial divide in our country. And I think the so-called black leaders are leading them in the wrong direction. I'll say that. As far as need them, I don't know. I haven't thought about that, really, Jesse.
And I know Bill didn't know I was going to ask these questions, folks. The reason I asked, for a couple of reasons. One is that when I was growing up, that was unheard of. I never heard of other human beings putting someone else over them to lead them. And I often wonder who's leading those black leaders that's supposed to be leading other people. And why can't that source lead them if they have to have a leader, right? But what really brought it to mind is that I'm not accustomed to that. I didn't grow up that way, number one. But Alveda King, do you know who she is?
Right. She's the daughter of Martin Luther King.
She is his niece, I think. Alveda.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And I saw her this morning on Fox News. And apparently Alveda and some other black preachers met with the Great White Hope, the president, sometime this week. And she was talking, she's the niece of Martin Luther King Jr. But she was talking about it, and she was calling herself and those other preachers black leaders. And I'm thinking, we don't need any more leaders. God is our leader. Christ is our example. God is our leader. I don't know what's wrong. And so it sounds like they're trying to go from black Democrats leading the blacks to black Republicans leading the blacks. And it's just going to still end up being a mess, because whenever you put other people over you like that, especially as an adult, they're going to lead you right to hell. They're going to use you for their personal gain.
Well, that frequently happens indeed. I have noticed through the years, though, that the black culture always upholds black individuals to be their leaders. They don't. It used to be the case that either black and white children doesn't matter, that they would all honor, for example, sports figures that were either black or white. But
Right.
today, you don't find any. I have never noticed any black children or black teenagers that consider whites, any white athlete, to be their hero, any white athlete to someone that they want to emulate. You just don't find that at all anymore.
And
It's just unusual.
there's nothing wrong with admiring someone for their talent. You appreciate good
Right.
talent, and it shouldn't matter what color the person is. You're absolutely right about that. But as a human being, I don't need a leader. God is my leader, and I don't need. And so, what I teach at Bond or advise them, men not to have someone over you. Let God lead you. Christ is our
Right.
leader, not some human being. And we need to get back to that, because if they constantly following someone else, they're going to always end up in a ditch. And I don't
Right.
like the fact that these Republican blacks are starting to set themselves up as leaders. The
I
people,
see.
the people need to be free. And when we vote for the best person. The ones that gonna represent the country, not just a black person or a white person, but the one that's gonna do what's right for the entire country. That's how we
Right.
used to vote. That's how it should go now.
That should be the way we vote, and that should be the way we look at it. But that's not what's occurring, is it? Yeah, in our whole country, in our entire political system, religious culture, that's the same thing, right?
Yeah, we got to change that. So, Bill, you heard that the president called out Elijah Common. Finally, somebody
Right.
spoke the truth with,
Right.
about what's happening in the inner cities, and it's brought a lot of attention to it now about the
Right.
rat-infected roaches, whatever you said, right? What did you
Yeah.
think about that?
Well, President Trump is exactly right. The black culture in those inner cities is absolutely degrading. It's horrific, and it's murderous. And the entire black culture has been collapsing for a long, long time. And I think, as you have rightly pointed out, for I guess a quarter of a century now, that's the fact that have no male role models in the home, no black fathers in the home, but we
Yeah.
have the absolute breakdown of the family. And we have a horrible culture in those inner cities, and the Democrat machine simply exacerbates it, continues to further it. All it does is shovel more money at it, and it just continues to get worse. That's exactly right. And President Trump is exactly right to point out this. Here's something else interesting. How is it that President Trump, a white man, cannot point out the errors of the black culture
Yeah.
without being called racist? How is that the case? We can't even. Is it require a black man to point out the errors of the black culture? Is that required, or does it make someone a racist from the white culture to point it out? But that's apparently how people are.
I hope now that the president, a white man, have spoken up and told the truth about what's happening in the black areas, that more and more white people will start speaking up now. But I've been saying for 29
Yeah.
years to white people, you need to tell the truth. You need to speak up.
Right.
You need to love black people enough to tell the truth, and don't be afraid, because the blacks are not going to speak up for themselves. They look to so-called leaders, and the so-called black leaders, the black preachers, the politicians, and others are taking advantage of them. So I'm really happy that the president finally said this out loud. And we haven't seen anything yet. He's not done yet.
No. You know what, Jesse? Our entire system, for example, in education and the hiring system and the job market, is all based upon the assumption that white people and the white culture is prejudiced and racist against blacks. It's based upon that assumption. For example, in the public school system, you have individuals that the children in the school, let's say the high schools, and there are mandatory reasons for them to be removed from the class and to put in alternative settings.
Yeah.
But there are also discretionary reasons. And you know that in the discretionary area, that is where a teacher has the discretion, let's say there's a disruptive students or someone cursing at them and making a mess in the classroom and being wild in the class, that there is a rule that says you cannot remove so many black children out of that, because the assumption is that the reason that's going on is because of racism. And so they put a quota on how many students, for discretionary purposes, are removed from the classroom.
That's
What is
amazing.
that to assume? That is to assume that the reason that they're removed is because of racist reasons. And so therefore you can't take out so many black children, so many Hispanics, simply because they say, well, you're being racist with it. So our whole system is based upon the assumption that whites are racist. And so when people absorb that in the public school system, we absorb that in the universities, we absorb that in the workplace, in the job market. Now all of a sudden, everybody, even the whites, are thinking, well, we're all racist. And so Trump says something like that, and then everybody just gets all crazy. They think, he's racist because he said something about a black community. It's crazy.
Well, the beauty about this word racism is that it's starting to wear down. It has no value anymore. I think that more and more white people are not afraid of that word because they see that it's just being used in order to control white people. And it has no meaning. And they have to use that. The Democrats and others have to use it because they need, when black people hear that word, most of them go into it like a trance. And they lose sense of consciousness. And whatever the
That's right. I think you're right.
and whatever the person that's using that word want the blacks to do, blacks go automatically and just do it because they're in a trance. And they also use it to keep black people brainwashed, dumbed down, and demoralized so that they can control the blacks to get power and wealth.
You know, it's the same thing in religion. You know what? When you discuss the Bible with someone and you disagree, and then you come out and say, well, you're going to hell for that. You know, this discussion's over because now there's no thinking, there's no reasoning, there's no thinking, well, maybe I'm wrong on the issue, because now everybody's all excited because someone said you're going to hell. I mean, you lose consciousness about the real issue when you throw those things out there like that.
Yeah.
And it may be true, it may be true, but it doesn't matter. The discussion is over.
Yeah.
This is an interesting story, real quickly, if I have a moment, Jay.
Yes.
You know, my brother was at Maxwell Air Force Base for a long time, or several years, and he retired several years ago. But he had a different events where he was at Alabama State University, and as you know, that's an all-black school there in Montgomery area. And the dean of the school told him, just point blank, he says, you know, and I've forgotten exactly the figures, but he says the number of students, male versus female, that are in the engineering departments in the different universities, it's always about twice as much for the males as it is for the females. He says, do you know what it is? He says, in Alabama State University, which is an all-black school, it's about 3 times the number of females as it is males.
Wow.
What's the problem? It has nothing to do with racism. It has nothing to do with the high-stakes entrance exam, as Mayor de Blasio says it is. It has to do with the black culture, and particularly this dean of the student said, it's the black males in our inner cities. They don't value education. They don't value the things that we value, and they don't care about morals and such things as that and academic achievement. They don't care about it. And he pointed that out, and I thought that was a real powerful illustration because it's an all-black school.
It is. I'm familiar with that school, too. You're absolutely right. They don't care about values anymore. They don't care about what is right. They really don't care about anything. Just trying to find some pot to smoke. As long as they get some pots, some sets, they'll be satisfied.
Right. And, you know, and our entire culture seems to pander to that idea. You look at commercials on television, and we're going to see commercials in which the kids are wearing hoodies and jumping around and dancing in the streets. What are we valuing? We're valuing just this culture that has a very sloppy attitude with it, not any kind of achievement, not looking nice, just a tattooed, hoodie-wearing, baggy pants culture is what we're admiring, and we're putting that right in the commercials on television for children.
Yeah.
And that leads us straight downward to the pits of hell, really, as far as the culture is concerned.
You're absolutely right. That's where they want blacks. They're trying to do that to the Mexicans now. I was driving in this morning, and I heard a black male radio talk show host, dumb as a doorknob. He said that President Trump should not have said that about Elijah Cummings. Elijah Cummings is an icon. Black people have known Elijah Cummings since the Civil Rights Movement. He participated in the Civil Rights Movement. I was thinking, How dumb of a person can you possibly be to say something like that?
Isn't that ridiculous? There it is again. You can't. The point is, you can't be a white man and criticize a black man, and that's exactly what's going on here. So it's going to take another black to criticize, and that's one reason. Incidentally, a lot of people. I mean, I know you point out that so many whites have not risen up to the challenge on this. You know what? The whites, and it's wrong, but nevertheless, the whites get beat down immediately if they say anything about it. It has to be a black man to say it about the black culture. So in the schools, for example, if you have troubles with minority children in the classroom, they're going to bring a minority man in there to deal with it because the whites, oh no, they don't listen to the white man. They will not. They don't respect the whites at all. It's just a lack of respect that is built into the system from the time they're very young children, and that's what's happening.
I noticed on some of the TV talk shows, whenever there's a black issue going on, whether it's a riot or whatever, they bring in black people to talk about the riot. They don't bring in anybody. They don't bring in white people or other people. They bring in blacks. They don't. I'm like, why are you doing this? Why are they catering to the children of the lie? Why not do it the right way? White people can discuss a riot, a black riot, or whatever it may be. Black people shooting cops or cops and blacks fighting, whatever. But they only bring in that race rather than white people.
Just like in Baltimore. In Baltimore, the Fox News is sending a black man in there to discuss it. Obviously, it's fine to have a black man to get in there and talk on the streets with the people. But the truth is, it does show us that we are catering to the system that says, whites cannot address a black problem.
Yeah.
And if you do say anything about it, then you're racist.
They say we're voting. Whites are, blacks are not allowed to vote for anything but another black person.
That's right.
They don't vote for the white person. That's why we got these dirty, nasty Democrats in Washington right now, because the blacks, like Elijah Cummings and others, the blacks keep voting them in over and over for 80 years, and these people do nothing for it. It's been reported that cities like Baltimore have received around $16 billion. The president want to know, where is that money? That needs to be investigated. $16 billion, and I believe that was for 2020. I think it was for this year or 2017 or something. Where is all that money?
They're very well it's being grafted out of the system.
Yeah.
And here's another interesting thing. Even in the Department of HUD, they still have, Jesse, the Affirmative Fair Housing Act, or the Affirmative Fair Housing Movement, which tells us that here's how it operates. They block grant money to various communities only if they're going to take the minority culture, the minority families, and put them into the whites. So in other words, you're going to have to mix it up. And they force them to do that with housing rules and regulations, just as they would in some housing community. They'll have standards, of course, that this community is going to live by. And so they move that, they push that money to a particular community, such as Philadelphia, Baltimore, and they take the black individuals and families and put them in the white community. And they'll take Hispanics and they put them in there. And it's all social engineering. Socialism has just gone amok. But that was an Obama-era program that is still going on even today in HUD underneath Ben Carson. And it is just, it's horrific. But that's what's happening, because the assumption is that the whites, once again, are all racist, and that's why the blacks are not in their communities. And so they're going to force it to be differently.
This $16 billion was given to Baltimore back in 2018, I'm told. And so will there come a point when white people start to speak up before we have a race riot? Because whites are only going to take it, especially young white males, are only going to take it for so long. Do you think that they will start speaking up before we get to that point?
Well, I'd hope so. I know already that there are a lot of whites that are speaking up, but, and the reason I gauged it that way, or considered to be that way, I saw an article on Reason magazine recently, which is really a non-religious issue paper magazine. It was an online print, online edition rather. And they basically say that white supremacy and white nationalism is built right into the conservative movement. And now the reason they say that is, of course, is because of President Trump's racist tweets telling people to go back home if they don't like it here in America. So they said, well, they just can't imagine. There it is. You can't imagine a white man telling any minority that they are not welcome here if they don't love this country. And they can't even imagine them saying, go back home. So the whole magazine article on reason.com is all about how the conservative movement has built into the system racism right from the bottom and white nationalism. And it's just really lamentable. So what I'm saying is I see that some people are speaking up, but they're coming after them, and they're coming after us, and they're saying, hey, you're all racist because you think that those such as Ilhan Omar need to go back home to Somalia.
She does. She needs to be. She should have been gone a long time ago.
Yeah, she didn't love this country.
No, not at all. I've been called, as you know, all kinds of names by blacks and others for speaking up. So white people got to understand when you stand for the truth, you will be attacked by the children of the lie, but that's not a reason to hold back. You still need to speak up anyway, because the battle is a spiritual battle between right and wrong, good and evil, and good got to stand up in order to defeat evil.
Think about how, excuse me, you would think about the white churches for just a moment and where they should be speaking out. Now, back in the 1950s, they spoke out against socialism and the different socialistic candidates, such as Lyndon Johnson, who was running in Texas at the time. But Lyndon Johnson got into Congress, and he put a rider on the IRS bill that required churches to shut their mouths about any political figure. Otherwise, they lose their tax-exempt status. Do you know what has happened? The white churches have shut their mouths, and they have been mousy about it. They don't speak out. They don't say anything. And if a preacher gets in the pulpit and says something, then everybody in the pew gets all excited and says, oh, you're getting into politics. If you talk about social justice, you're getting into politics. And that's nothing to do. It's just preaching the gospel. And the white churches have just put a big piece of masking tape over their mouths and say, we're not going to talk about it. So it is a frightening prospect, really, because they've been so fearful just from the threat of IRS removing tax-exempt status.
So how do the white men live with themselves knowing they have that type of fear? How do they face the women and children knowing that the women and children know that the man is afraid?
You know what? That is a great question. I just think I wouldn't be able to live with myself.
Me either.
You know, when I step in the pulpit, I say, you know what? When I'm in the pulpit, I have no friends. And it has to be that way.
Yeah.
You preach the word of God and speak what is truth. And whether it cuts all the way across the board or not, you just have to speak it. But, we have so many churches, they're not going to do it. They don't even approach the subject. They don't approach the hem of the garment on those subjects at all. And consequently, they leave a lot of stones uncovered. Or, they don't move those stones at all.
If ever we needed Jerry Falwell, we need him now.
Well, we need some preachers speaking out, saying something about this.
I'm telling you. Bill, we're so out of time. I just realized it's the bottom of the hour. Tell the people how to get your radio show, how to read your blog posts and everything.
Well, thank you for that, Jesse. It's American Liberty with BillLockwood.com, and I have a lot of guest writers. Myself, I've not been writing a whole lot this summer. I'm getting ready for a debate. Matter of fact, I'm leaving tomorrow for Michigan for a debate in Ludington, Michigan, on what is called realized eschatology, and it will be in a church up there. So it's a religious debate. But at any rate, you can get to my website that way. Then also, the radio show is named exactly the same out of Wichita Falls. It's News Talk 1290. And then in Lubbock, it's News Talk 790, and Abilene 1440 a.m. So Saturdays, 11 o'clock here in Wichita Falls. Sunday, it's at 5 o'clock in Lubbock and in Abilene. So thank you for that very much, Jesse.
Any more information on this debate tomorrow? Joe, are they typing your note? Any more information on the debate? How can people get there? How can they find out more about it for tomorrow?
You know what? I had a debate with the same individual last year, and it's on the church website, which is coc.org, Iowa Park, coc.org. And the debate is there on the website, but the debate involves what is called realized eschatology. This group of people say that Christ came again in the destruction of Jerusalem, which I believe is true, but they say that's the final time that he came, and he's not coming again. So that was the end of the world. It was the end of the Jewish world. That's how they consider the end of the world. End of the world, the second coming of Christ. The entrance into heaven and hell occurred right there. And everything that we consider to be in the Bible regarding the second coming of Christ has already occurred at the destruction of Jerusalem. And so that's what we're debating. I, of course, deny all of that. I believe that the second coming is future, and that the end of the world and entrance into heaven and hell, the destruction of the world, all of that is future still.
And so they had you there before, and they had the audacity to have you back?
Well, you know what? We had him down here last time. He was here in Iowa Park. And so this is the first time I'm going to his home turf. This is his home turf.
I was about to say, he must love losing.
Well, I don't know. You know what? We have a good time with it, though. We sure do.
Yeah, I know. Bill, thank you so much, man. Say hello to the family for me, all right?
Okay, will do, Jesse. Thank you so much for all your work.
Is there anything else you want to promote or say before we run?
No, I can't think of anything offhand.
All right.
I'll think of it as soon as we sign off. I'll think of something.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill. God bless you, man.
You too. Lord bless you, Jesse.
All right, buddy. Amazing. Our Park. Check it out. Our Park, coc.org. All right.